My name is Paul Byer. I'm CEO of a company called GA Insights, and I'm moderating this panel today. Super excited for our guest, and we're going to be talking about the adoption threshold. How are we thinking about AI moving forward here? But first, let's do introductions. Shakar, tell us who you are.
I'm Shikar Ghosh. I'm a professor at Harvard Business School, where I teach a couple of courses that are based on AI. The first one is a course called Three Technologies, and we look at how these technologies are going to change the world. It's AI, obviously, but it's also blockchain and biology, synthetic biology. And the second one deals with how the mostly AI is going to change the workforce. So what happens to particularly MBAs and early career stage people? I've been fascinated by AI for the last 5 years or so, and so I'm looking forward to this.
Great. Thank you, Shekhar. Thank you, Paul. My name's Pavan. I work with Flagship Pioneering. It's a $14 billion fund, but I work for one of their portfolio companies called Extuitive. We're very focused on upending the $1 trillion ad industry using artificial intelligence by helping e-commerce companies predict and forecast which ads are going to perform best. I, too, like Shekhar, have been pretty involved with AI companies in the last 5 to 6 years across a variety of different industries, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation, Paul. Thank you.
Part of the topic of this is talking about infrastructure for AI. Certainly, the videos talk a lot about AI factories and tokens as a service, like electricity. Is that the right way to think about it? And
Go ahead, please.
So I think, one way to think about it is that AI is not one thing. AI is going to be at multiple levels. And unlike, say, electricity it's more like it's a technology that allows you to do multiple things at the same time, in the same way as intelligence is not one thing. It's built into software. It's built into the way we think. It's at multiple levels. And so, you know, it's hard to make so that the line between banality and wisdom is pretty thin and it making general statements about AI, because in fact, it is all of these things are true. So there's a level of AI that's going to be like electricity, and there's a level of AI that's going to be very specific to individuals, very specific to use cases, very specific to a particular way in which it's done. And so all these things are true.
Great. Yeah, thanks. So it's funny you should ask that, Paul. I was just at CES and Jensen was talking about physical intelligence and he mentioned tokens as a service. And I think while the utilities model is an interesting one for AI, I do think, it's interesting because data centers will get energy and capital and they provide you with tokens. And there's very few companies actually consuming billions, if not trillions of tokens. That'll happen over time. I think that will be serviceable, but the contextualization of intelligence won't. So how you govern the data, how you prompt, what your specific data sets are, et cetera, will never actually be a utility. So unlike electricity, which is a utility or a service, I think AI will probably never get there because there's so many elements to it. But the infrastructure elements perhaps could be, and maybe become interchangeable over time as well.
Yeah, and in fact, if you think about what Jan LeCun was just talking about, if the model that you have is a model that is fundamentally an LLM-based model, then you can think about things in these layers. But if you think about a world model in which, you're physically doing things, then the world changes quite a bit because you have physical, it's in every car, it's in every toaster, it's in every factory, and it's at every different level in that process.
we've heard a lot of talk already, even today, from Jan and Kuhn about the power of the 5 or 6 major tech companies and infrastructure there. Are you worried about that from companies, or how should companies think about that?
Yeah, I can go. So look, it's interesting. We've seen the story before. I've been very fortunate to see a few waves from desktop to mobile, data center to cloud, and now this huge wave of AI. And I think what's different this time is that while there are the big hyperscalers that are clearly going to have an advantage with distribution in particular, what's different this time is you're seeing partnerships. So as an example, just yesterday, Andy Jassy had a great interview where he was talking about using Trainium, which is Amazon's chipset, to get benefits from their own thing, but they're still partnering with NVIDIA. They're still partnering with OpenAI. So while the hyperscalers do have an advantage, they don't have the monopolies that they used to. So they're still being forced to partner with NVIDIA, with OpenAI and others. And I think that's going to be the case for some time. They're going to have a monopoly on certain things. There's going to be very specific GPU providers like CoreWeave, which, by the way, still buy from NVIDIA. So it's an interesting circular logic type revenue model there. And then you're going to have the classic private, enterprise-focused, government-focused cloud providers that still take over. So this one feels a little different. While there are advantages, I do think the partnership angle, the hybrid partnership angle, is the one that strikes me as different as in this way.
So I think a different way to also think about this is that we can look upon this as being, this is very specialized, the frontier models, and the leading 4 or 5 companies are going to own it. I think that's a limited way of thinking about it because, that assumes that LLMs are the destination. If you have other kinds of models coming in, then these companies are not necessarily the ones that are going to dominate that. I also think that there's a completely different way of thinking about this, which is that this is all a commodity. That tokens and coming out of the models, the intelligence that's coming out is going to be very close to being the same.
For the last 3 or 4 years, being commodity,
being a commodity in that
everyone get PhD on demand.
Yeah. So what was happening before was every new release has been a significant increase, but now we're reaching a point where you can get a lot of workloads done with existing models. You don't need the next one to do it. And increasingly, what you're going to find is that the work that people do with AI is going to be done, can be done with next year's models, and you don't need the 2028 or 2030 models. And then issues of cost, issues of security, ease of use, those things become more important, like in any other thing. And I think that's where normal business strategy takes on.
If I could add a finer point to that, I think if we look at history to guide us, the same thing happened in cloud. AWS had this massive lead. Nobody could touch them, seemingly. And then it became a commodity. Azure caught up, and then people started going further and further up the stack. We're going to see something similar play out. Anthropic has a clear lead right now with all the innovative work they're doing. But to your point, Shikhar, I think that lead will vaporize quickly. And then eventually we got to figure out what the real differentiators are in this stack for people. And I think this may be a lead into your next question, is because people are already starting to think about how to modularize their architectures to protect themselves against lock-in in particular. But I'll share more thoughts on that later.
Also, I think very few countries are going to allow that to happen completely. It's just too central. So China, obviously, but then you have India, you have the Middle East, you have Europe, that are going to want their own models. And now with distillation, with a variety of other techniques, you can actually create very competent models quite easily, without having to go through the billions of dollars of pre-training.
One of the other topic we've heard a lot about already is just absorption and learning. We've got such a challenge with getting workers at companies to pick this up. We've got students at graduate schools. What are you seeing, Shikhar, and others on how students and workers should be thinking about adopting this, and how should managers lead them to faster adoption?
Yeah, so, I've been surprised over the last couple of years that the gap between people who know and people who are very, very naive about it has been growing. As the field has been going forward, you have a group of people who are deeply enmeshed in the technology, and then you have a lot of other people who've just tried it. They've tried it for trivial things and so on, but they don't really have a knowledge of it. And I'm seeing that gap getting wider. Now, hopefully at some point it gets narrower, but the best way to really, this is so different from a deterministic technology or just regular programming, because of the stochastic nature of it, that you have to actually get your hands dirty. You have to try it out. You have to see what works, and different models behave differently. And when you do that, you start to really get a sense of what this technology is about.
Absolutely. I think the question was around young people and their use of AI. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. Adoption both for young people and workers. Right?
Oh, I see.
Do you work in general?
Fair enough.
No,
Okay.
and what should we
Got
do about it?
So I have two perspectives on this. My son just turned 13, so he's technically eligible for OpenAI. because he was a little irritated last year, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't give you an OpenAI account. But I've told him, use it for everything and tell me if your teachers get upset at you. And the reason is we need more AI native young people in this country, in particular, in this country, in the United States. And so my advice to every young person, no matter what their age, as long as they're not misusing it and causing harm or whatever it is, to use it for anything imaginable within boundaries. No cheating, but try to use it to build something. Try to use it to create ideas. Try to use it as a thought partner. And I've seen that with the younger crowd. They're hesitant initially because the schools are so that they go to are so particular and strict. They're going to get slapped on the wrist or suspended or whatever it is. But I think that's the wrong way to think about it, in my view. That's what a public policy thing. On workers, at least at my company, we're encouraged to use it. There are very strict guidelines though at enterprise. At least the parent company is a big enterprise, so images are not allowed. Uploading sensitive documents is not allowed. And I sometimes will, if I want to do something deeper, will use my own personal ChatGPT account to do deeper research. So workers are using it every day in some cases, depending on the task. Are they using it in a deep way for their specific tasks? It depends on the company. But I've seen over a 50% adoption rate with
the
it.
current company now, you don't have a secure employee chatbot?
We do.
Oh, you do.
So we do have that.
Yeah.
I also have my personal account because sometimes there are things I'm trying to do. I'm not putting any sensitive information on there.
Yeah.
But it is so restrictive from an enterprise perspective, which I completely understand. Because there have been stories of people putting in financial statements and personal information about executives and strategic documents. And obviously I would never do that. But if there's something that I want to do as a general research project in deep research, and what I do is I'll ask it to create a thought plan with me and go through a 10, 15-minute exercise before actually giving the output. I can't always do that with the restricted version of AI. And I think that's sort of the needle that a lot of workers are trying to thread, is how to use it in a responsible way without running afoul of corporate governance policies. That's what I'm seeing.
That's really great. Yeah, so last question, we'll finish up here. This space is moving so fast. You guys both have unique perspectives on it. What are you seeing that you don't think most of the people on the internet and Forbes audience, it doesn't know?
I think the thing that surprises, I don't know about, the Forbes audience.
Okay.
But, I think when I look at students who are doing an MBA at Harvard, right? So sort of, smart people who are well informed. The thing that surprises me most is how the world is bifurcating into people who are true believers, mostly because they've done it, mostly because they've tried, and people who are just lagging behind because they've dabbled in it, and they've been frustrated because of hallucinations, because they don't know how to prompt, because they go back in. And the thing I keep emphasizing to my students is, this thing knows everything in the world, and there's one of you is going to be wrong, or one of you doesn't know how to use the other. And so, in all likelihood, if it's not doing a cognitive task that you think it should be doing, it's probably something that you're doing wrong. In the same way as if you took an Excel program and gave it to somebody and said, create a model, and they didn't know how to use it, they'd get very frustrated. There is a learning curve in it. There is a way that you think slightly differently. And people make the mistake of thinking that because it is so easy to use, in fact, the one of the weaknesses of the technology is it's really easy to create really bad product. And it's really hard, or it takes a lot of practice to create something that's meaningful and actually moves the needle.
So Harvard, it's really stunning, this, Shakar. So we're talking about Harvard Business School, type A, super start, and we're year 3 of post 3.5, and AI is everywhere. And you're still seeing the bifurcation on cognitive work of thinking about business school. And that's, I take you on love it.
Yeah. So if you don't mind me asking a follow-up there, is that, you think, because they're holding themselves back, or is that because I'm not saying the royal HBS is making them not use it in the most effective way? Like, do you have specific policies?
No, I think it's, it's 3 years. The 3 years is a very short time, sure, right? And so, I think that we've only introduced a course in the first year last year, and we're still learning how to teach it. A lot of the faculty doesn't know how to teach it. They don't themselves use it. So we're still very early in this whole process. And there's a whole group of students who are not technology oriented.
I'll answer or unless you wanted to end with a different question.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the one thing that I would say most people don't realize is that it's to the point Chico was making is garbage in, garbage out, but there are limits to what AI could do. It will only solve problems that you structure well for it. That's point A. And it is only going to give you information that is already ingested. It is taking existing data, which is mostly text-based. It has largely, most artificial intelligence has largely left the physical world untouched. You're starting to see some waves of that with humanoid robots and Jensen talking about physical intelligence, and you're seeing robots everywhere. But even that doesn't touch sort of, we haven't scanned, as an example, the beautiful Alps out here and understood how they actually would be impacted by, say, climate change, as an example. What we're largely seeing is text-based models that will eventually self-implode because at some point there's not enough data to ingest. So what I would say is that's the next big wave that people should look out for is the physical world beating the digital world with artificial intelligence. And the second big wave is going to be how people actually interact with artificial intelligence tools, whether it's Gemini or Anthropic or others, that they're going to have to get smarter or be left behind. So those are the two things I would point out.
I think, just one final comment. I think the thing that people have, my students, have probably a lot of difficulty with is they're used to a model of learning. You go to school, you learn, you get your degree, and then you learn something on the job, but fundamentally you're learning and then you're doing. Yeah. And with AI, because it's moving so fast and the qualitative difference between the models is significant, you have to keep learning and you have to constantly change what you do as a job. And that's really hard to do. So you think about somebody who becomes a financial analyst and then they have to become a massage therapist, right? And, so it's because you move to physical models, right? And I think that's just a hard thing for them to think about, that we're moving into a world where intelligence is not, you've learned, now you do, you get some experience and you're better. We're just moving to a different paradigm.
Such a great point, and the success is defined: learn, do, and get accolades.
Right.
In a completely different model. So anyway, Mr. Carr, really wonderful. Ron, thank you so much, and appreciate it. And thanks everyone here.